Hello everyone and welcome to the 27th video of Chess Eddie. In this video we're going to be talking about the Queen's Gambit. So the Queen's Gambit is all about white baiting the Queen's pawn, or the c4 pawn. The pawn that goes on c4. And it's all about black either accepting or declining the gambit. So there are two lines and different variations in those two lines. So there are two main lines, accepted and the declined. So for the beginning of this video, we're going to be talking about the accepted variation. So the first few moves of the Queen's Gambit are d4, d5. The second move for white is c4. Now we're going to be talking about accepting the gambit here. So black plays d takes c4. Now there's a move here for white which actually is good for him, but there's also another move. So there are pretty much two good moves that are playable and are known in this position. So the first move that I'm going to show you is e4. This allows white to take control of the center and attack the c4 pawn with the bishop on f1. This leads to b5 if, of course, black wants to defend the e4 pawn, and something like a4. And this leaves black with a pretty weak pawn structure. So e4 was the first move that is playable in this position. Now the second move is actually e3. This leads to b5, again, if black wants to guard that c4 pawn from being taken. And then a4, and then b takes a4. This creates a pretty weak pawn structure for black. It gives a +1, +2 advantage for white here. So before b5, e3, if black goes queen d5, this allows black to guard the c4 pawn without pretty much destroying his or weakening his pawn structure. Knight c3 is the most instinct move here to push that queen away, and in this case the queen goes back to e6. This is now followed by knight f3, knight f6, and knight e5, leading to white being ahead in development and putting the black queen in an uncomfortable position. Now here, after queen d5, white plays knight c3, but instead of going to e6, black can also go to c6. Now if black goes to c6, white can now go to f3, bishop g4, d5, queen a6, b3, b5, b takes c4, b takes c4, and queen d4. Now, this puts white in a comfortable position here because he's attacking two pieces, the bishop and the c4 pawn. He has more space, he's controlling more of the center, and he's about to develop more of his pieces. So, these are pretty much the basic lines of the Queen's Gambit. But now, let's move on with more variations. Okay, so let's return to even more variations here. So here is bishop e6, knight f3, c6. C6 is a move that allows black to create a stronger pawn structure than to just play b5 without the c6 support. This leads to queen c2, b5, knight g5. Knight g5 actually attacks two pieces, the bishop and the pawn on h7. But instead of knight g5, another move that gives white the advantage is b3, c takes b3, and a takes b3, and this allows white to have a slightly better positional advantage in the long term with his rook on the semi-open file and his spatial advantage. Now, another variation that can be played here after e3 by black is c5. This leads to the moves bishop takes c4, c takes d4, and knight f3. And here, it might be a pitfall that black actually goes into, which is d takes e3. This is a blunder, leading white at a plus 12 advantage. It leads to a removal of a defender tactic. Bishop takes f7, check, king takes f7, queen takes d8. And that's just a simple tactic. Now, instead of going to c5 after e3, black can also go to e5. And now the moves after e5 are bishop takes c4, e takes d4, knight f3, knight f6, and castle. Now, this is a pretty straightforward line, and this gives white a 0.60 advantage, so pretty much equal in this position, and yeah, pretty even. However, if we go back 2 moves here, actually 1 move, if black still takes on e3, then there's still that tactic, bishop takes f7. Now, yes, the king doesn't necessarily have to take the bishop anymore because the pawn on e7 isn't there anymore, but still black loses a pawn. So those were the main lines of the Queen's Gambit accepted. So now we're going to be learning about the Queen's Gambit declined variations and what both sides can do in those variations. Okay, so now we're going to be learning about the variations of the Queen's Gambit decline. So pretty much like the accepted variation, the first few moves are d4, d5, and c4. But now, instead of playing d takes c4, black transitions into the Queen's Gambit declined, which is the move e6. This puts black in a defending position and leads to the move knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop g5. Make sure to always actually move the bishop to this square g5 before you actually move the pawn to e3, because the e3 pawn would block the bishop from developing. So these moves lead to castle, e3, h6. Because of this move h6, now there are 2 decisions that white actually can make. Either move the bishop back to h4 or move the bishop to f4. Now the best move here is bishop h4, leaving that bishop on the diagonal and keeping pressure on that knight. This leads to b6. This can lead to a more closed position, and instead of trading so many pieces in the start, black decides to go for a very solid position, leaving white into making difficult decisions. So now, instead of playing b6, black can actually do knight e4. This is another variation. So this move, knight e4, this move is known as the Lasker defense. This allows black to trade pieces with white. Leads to the moves bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, rook c1, c6. Both sides in this situation are safe and equal, with black having plans such as moving the knight to d7 and the pawn to b6. The knight on the center of the board is also an important piece in this position for black, attacking the knight on c3. So now, continuing on the b6 variation, here are the moves. So bishop d3 is the correct move. bishop b7, castle, and d takes c4. Keep in mind that you should never actually take this pawn, the c4 pawn, before white has developed the light squared bishop. Because now white has to take with bishop takes c4 and pretty much loses time. And now black has the idea of attacking the knight on f3 and putting pressure on the king side with that bishop on b7 and pretty much having a solid position. Now black can go knight b d7. Here, knight b d7 is followed by ideas like c5, that puts pressure on white's center pawn on d4. It also prepares ideas such as rook c8, bringing the queen to c7, and bringing the f8 rook in the center to d8. So those were the pretty much the main lines and few variations of the Queen's Gambit declined. So those were the two variations of the Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit accepted and the Queen's Gambit declined. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something from this video. Make sure to memorize this opening and understand how it works, why each side plays which move, and win your games. So make sure to subscribe and like and share this channel with your friends. Bye.